Hello, thank you for joining me, and this is a surprise video. It has been a long, hot last few days, not the normal weather in the inland northwest, in fact record-breaking temperatures, although all the horses that are up from Arizona seem to be doing just fine. Anyways, I just wanted to jump on here real quickly because there has been a theme in quite a lot of the posts I've done on social media and in discussions with in-person clients in talking about assumptions and how often that we start to assume the horse is starting in a place and then we are on our journey of working forward, and how many times our assumptions are inaccurate. So I had several horses that came in that had a lot of experience, seemed to have a lot of miles, seemed to have not been that bad, meaning they didn't hurt or scare their owners. But things weren't really going smoothly. It seemed like the more that the people were doing with their horse, the worse the horse was getting, in the sense of quietly or passively resistant, not really wanting to be caught, not really wanting to be tacked. And so, the defensiveness was starting to snowball. And for a lot of people, because we aren't maintaining or asking the question of, do I have quality with my horsemanship, and we're just looking at, can I go through the motions of X, Y, and Z, whatever the checklist or the goals or the intention is of that day. And it's really hard because when you're constantly surrounded by busy horses, chaotic horses, horses that are continuously showing stress and defensiveness and tension in their body, when you look at your own horse, if there's any similar characteristics or behaviors, we don't really notice that there's anything different. So we think this is normal and we think this is how horses are, and we keep asking more of them until the day that at some point the horse resists enough or scares us enough or hurts us, unfortunately, enough that we go, okay, wait, time out. We need to, start over here, or at least start with a clean slate and not be starting in a place of assumptions. And this is one of those really hard things. So often when I discuss, the horse's mental, emotional, and physical well-being, a lot of times people are thinking, I've spent all the money on the nice pasture or the nice stall or the nice turnout or whatever it is, and trying to give this horse, the best life possible. And many people don't realize how often horses are living in a continuous state of concern, fear, and anticipation. And it may not be out of anything that you have done with your horse, but it can be that the horse has never found a place of being able to actually let down. So you'll see sometimes, like, I'm posting all these pictures of horses that come here and they're actually laying down. I find sleep deprivation is one of the #1 contributors to unwanted behavior, because horses are so on edge and so on guard. They are literally not getting the sleep that they need, and so it's causing what we would call neurotic or crazy or dramatic behavior, and it's a contributor to that. And again, the sleeping isn't the issue. It's why can't the horse let down and feel safe enough to actually lay down and sleep. Yes, they can sleep while they're standing, but it is a different type of sleep that they get when they actually can let down. I find many times horses where people have good intentions in putting them out in a herd, if there is an assumption that it's a horse and it's a herd animal, so therefore it will be fine. But many of these horses, from the very start, and how they were bred, in when they were weaned from their mother, and their beginning exposure to, we'll say, the human experience, we've taken the horse out of the horse. And so here we are operating years later on this assumption that the horse will be fine in the herd because instinctively that's what he should do, and yet we are not recognizing how much of what we have done has taken away the horse's ability to truly think and function as this animal that we expect him to be. And then we act surprised when we have the horse who's dysfunctional. So example, I have a horse who arrived that was low man, in the herd, and had all the marks all over him, and really struggled, even being with 2 older horses that I know for years and are, we'll say, fair in how they balance out running the herd and who's coming through, and there's lots of space and lots of options. And this insecure horse who was so defensive to all forms of pressure and basically shut down and would physically push his way through pressure, whatever it may be, human, horse, fence, trailer, whatever it was, he would just push his way through, and that's how he learned to survive over the years. And watching him in this herd with two, we'll say polite, other members of the herd, trying to give him fair warning, trying to help him learn where his space was in the herd. And this horse could not see it, could not hear it, could not believe it, until finally the horses higher up in the group really defined boundaries and really had to follow through, and watching how many times they had to follow through before this, we'll say, defensive horse was able to even acknowledge what was happening. And so if we took that horse, many times people would say, you know, they'd add the human filter, the human emotion, which does not apply to horses, but that's how people explain and justifies, oh, look how dumb he is. He keeps running in on top of the group, you know, and they keep telling him no. Oh, he's just stubborn. Oh, they put all these human emotions to trying to explain this dysfunctional state that this horse is in. And this dysfunctional state is actually due to the human experience. It is a result of how things have been done in the horse's past, to the point to where his brain is so far removed or anticipative or ahead of where his body physically is at, that he physically puts himself into dangerous or stressful or uncomfortable positions, and then puts up with the chaos of it without any level of self-preservation, without the ability to actually acknowledge what's happening right here, right now, and make a decision to remove himself or to spatially move himself to somewhere else. And again, many times, you know, especially if you're in like a regular boarding scenario where there's stalls, you often don't see herd interaction and behavior. But even when we do, it's often not healthy herd behavior. And so we're thinking, you know, all the horses always go tearing around the pasture. You know, all the horses are having fun because they're galloping, or whatever, again, the human explanation of all of these different scenarios are. And we don't even actually know what horses look like, what horses, you know, act like when they are in a healthy, balanced lifestyle, diet, herd, location, interaction with the human. There's so few examples of it that, unfortunately, our reference point of what is normal really shouldn't be normal, and yet it has become the norm. And so again, this assumption, well, I'm trying the best I can, I have my horse out in a herd, he's on grass, you know, we're doing all these good things for him to try and get him happy and feeling good about life, so we have this great relationship, and we may not realize it, but where we're jumping in is maybe farther down the line than what needs to be addressed with the horse first. And again, a lot of times you have to remember, horses come to me after it has all gone wrong. Rarely do I get, unless it's colts, rarely do I get horses where it's a clean slate, where I don't have to undo what has been unintentionally often taught. Remember, every time you're interacting with your horse, you're teaching him something, whether or not you intend to. And often people are teaching, you know, what they don't want their horse to do, because of how the interaction is going. So, you know, when horses come here, it's a lot of different things that go into the rehabilitation and the re-education of a horse. And, you know, as this was coming up kind of as the theme of this past week and a half or so, I find that a lot of times, first, when the human is making assumptions that the horse is in a place where he's not, meaning like further ahead or more capable than wherever he's currently functioning, they're missing different places where the horse really needs more support from the human, needs more support in the direct communication and the specificity of the communication and the quality of the communication, so that that horse can learn to work through things in a reasonable, willing manner, versus many times people are going for what I'm going to call the obedient response from the horse. So meaning, as long as he doesn't scare you too much, or he doesn't hurt you too bad, or he doesn't whatever, fill in the blank, then we kind of got through it. Then we're assuming, hey, we're fine. And we're not realizing that that mediocrity and that leaving that horse kind of in the gray area or kind of sneaking through these scenarios is teaching him something. And we're teaching him to be defensive. We're teaching him to be anticipative. And the next time that we go to present a similar or even the same scenario, it often feels like things are getting worse, you know? And so when we see this place where maybe the horse was resistant, or we're going to say reactive or dramatic in his response, and then we, you know, however we're approaching it, we see him suddenly go very, very quiet or very, very still. Often people translate that stillness, that quietness, as a good thing, and saying, okay, well, see, he was, all over the place, he was drifting, or he was dragging me sideways, or whatever he was doing, and now he's standing totally still, so we must be doing something, all right, something is getting better, and not realizing that often horses have two options. They either can try and run away and get away from you, or they can shut down and quit. And a lot of times we are actually teaching our horse to quit without even realizing it. And so the horse has tried the chaotic response and trying to get away or trying to avoid if there was pressure of the location or physical pressure, whatever it is going on in the communication. And then if that didn't work, a lot of times they'll get very quiet. And often when horses get very quiet, meaning still in their feet. But if you look at them, there's often a rigidity in there. So their ears won't be moving, their eyes won't be blinking, their breathing will be really tight and inconsistent and not a normal for just standing still. And you'll just see their posture. There'll be what I call a brace, a physical brace. Remember, the physical is a reflection of the mental and emotional that the horse is experiencing. So when you see, a horse holding himself very rigid, very tight, very still, think of it as a ticking bomb. Think of it as a building of emotions inside that are building and building and building. And then as it is building and you're thinking, hey, we're standing still, it's good. And you ask that one more little thing, just that one last thing before we put you away. And then all of a sudden, the horse explodes. It's not all of a sudden. It's that defensiveness you initially saw when that horse was trying to get away or be dramatic or fleeing or whatever, however he was trying to cope with the scenario. When you shut that down, but it's still inside of him, you haven't helped the horse mentally work through the scenario of what you were presenting. You were just making him physically contain himself and be obedient. All of that stress and chaos is still inside of him. And then as you go to ask the next piece, thinking, hey, we're now at a good spot, let's move forward, not realizing that defensiveness is still inside of him, all of a sudden you get the unwanted behavior. All of a sudden you get the super reactive. And that's where people will say, but he was standing still, he was fine, he was just right here, he was so quiet. And, this comes back to, as I started with this video about talking about quality. So much of the time, as long as the horse isn't scaring us, we're like, hey, that's good enough. But that isn't quality. That isn't supportive of the horse. That isn't building the horse's confidence. That isn't helping him retain his curiosity. Instead, everything becomes more and more fearful. Then you see the defensive, and when the horse's brain is anticipative, the body starts going all over the place. And so much of the time, the answers that people will offer you is move his feet, move his body, make him do this, disengage the hind end, lift up the shoulders, move him over here, put him on a circle. Everything is a physical response. Well, if all you do is poke and prod and physically move and chase that horse around, and he's mentally concerned, defensive, and fearful, what does making him move do? You're just adding fuel to the fire. And then it gets worse and worse and worse every time you have this buildup or these moments of concern. Yeah, maybe one or two times you can wear him out enough in order to get through a scenario, but you're actually conditioning him. You're conditioning him physically to be able to resist longer, to anticipate longer, to hold on to a concerned or fearful thought longer. And so then what? Again, you're teaching that horse all of this unwanted behavior. So that's where a lot of times, when people start off in this place of like, well, last time we worked on X, Y, and Z, and now I want to move forward. Or before in the past, I've done this with my horse, so now I want to do whatever else is going on. I try and remind people, in order to approach our horses, and if we want to have quality and we want to have long-term lasting changes that help us, I want you to think about quality and saying, where is my horse in this moment? Right now, this is all that matters. In this moment, where is his brain? Where is his emotions? Is he feeling defensive? Does he look like he's trying to avoid or flee or leave or whatever it is that he's coming up with? And we need to first address that, because if we don't ever address the fact that our horse is always trying to get away from us, then everything that you're presenting is more pressure, and the only thing the horse is fixating on is how can he continue to get away. And this is where, open up any tack magazine, there's the latest gadget or quick fix or, equipment or whatever. Again, you're physically containing the horse. And you may be able to contain him to a certain degree for a little while, but have you ever noticed people who tend to do a lot of, we'll say, bit changes? Every 6 months, they're changing the severity of the bit. Well, why is that? Because you've taught the horse to shut down towards the pressure, and they can take it. The old saying, you can beat a horse to death. The horses will reach a point of shutting down and just taking the pressure continuously. And people go, oh my gosh, my horse won't respond at all. Again, that's a human taught behavior. When you see a colt hit the ground and they're young and they're bouncing, they're curious, they're interested, they're searching, they're looking, they're communicating. So why is it that the more that we offer training of the horse, the less interested they are in life, the more they're looking to avoid or escape or get away, or the more defensive they become. What is happening in our communication that is actually causing the horse to become more removed and more dysfunctional? And then we have all of these, you know, expectations of the horse of, well, he's at this age, so he should be doing X, Y, and Z, instead of saying, what if there was quality? What if there was quality where I took the horse in this moment on this day, I addressed where his brain was, what his emotions were, help him diffuse any sort of concern or tension or defensiveness or whatever he has going on, and then I presented what I wanted him to do. We probably would have a very different, what I call conversation or two-way communication with the horse. Then let's go forward. And so, you know, when I talk about having empathy for the horse, it's not to say poor horse, or especially for those of you who have horses who've had a troubled past, or maybe, you know, abuse, neglect, whatever's been going on, severe training methods, whatever it is. It's not out of saying poor horse and victimizing the horse. It's to have an empathy that what the horse is communicating to you in this moment is really what he is experiencing. And we have to believe it. And somehow in our society, and I come across this all over the world. I came back from teaching in Asia before COVID. I was in the South Pacific before that. I was in South America before that. Across the board, there is this idea that we have to make the horse do what we want, irrelevant of what the horse is experiencing. And to me, that's all ego-based, all of it. And so if we put our ego versus the horse is always going to win. It's always going to feel like a fight. It's always going to feel like a challenge. And to me, that should not be part of any of the relationship. I'm only 5'2". I work with draft horses, thoroughbreds, warm bloods, Mustangs, everything in between. I'm not going to make a horse do anything. There is no horse that I'm going to physically make comply. So if I'm not going to physically make him comply, I need his mind. I need his mind to engage in what it is that I'm offering. And that way I have half a chance of influencing physically what he's doing with a softness, with a quality, with a willingness, rather than tolerance, containment, obedience, and all of these other things that unfortunately is the norm. Go to any warm-up arena at a competition and go look around. And I have students who compete. This isn't an anti-competing. It isn't a certain type of discipline. It isn't about a certain type of horses or certain style of riding. All the way across the board, if you look, very infrequently do people actually consider the horse. Where is my horse's mind today? Where is he focused? And every day is different. Just like when we show up, every day is different. If we could approach, instead of having assumptions of this is what I used to do, or this is what I did, or this is what I expect my horse to do, or this is what we should be doing because my neighbor has a horse who's the same age who's doing all of these other things, therefore my horse should do it. All of this stuff, all this rhetoric that like doesn't apply at all. It purely comes from an ego place. And instead come from a place of empathy and say, what does my horse need in this moment? And you connect one moment to the next moment to the next moment. You are having a conversation. You are communicating. You are supportive. You are addressing when the horse is asking for help. And guess what you see? You see his brain start to become present. You see curiosity start to replace fear. And you see a physical softness in his body where it feels like you have options and you're no longer left wondering or hoping that you'll make it or you'll sneak through an uncomfortable situation. Are there going to be unexpected things that come up? Absolutely, all the time. We cannot control the world around us. So rather than trying to sneak through it, why don't we have this partnership that's based on this respectful communication? And that way, whatever comes up, we've already been, we'll say, practicing the conversation. It's not about practicing the scary spot or practicing going somewhere different. It's practicing how you communicate, how you're reading your horse behavior, and how you guys meet in the middle so that the horse is feeling a level of confidence and support every time you're presenting all of these completely foreign scenarios and asking these totally unnatural things of him. So anyways, the next time you head out, maybe think about, are you starting with any degree of assumptions? Are you starting from a place of empathy, and how might that influence your thoughts, your communication, and what your horse's response is on the other end? I'd love to hear your thoughts below, and thank you for joining me, and have a great rest of your day.